Yes, Dr. Lati, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 8th session of the first international online conference on technology, law, and education. Well, I'll be the chair person for this session. And just a kind reminder for all the presenters, please, you have 15 minutes per each presenter. Try to respect the allotted time. Well, first of all, we're going to start by Professor Areen Ahmed Mohammed from College of Education and Languages, Charmo University, Chamchama, Kurdistan. Well, his presentation is entitled Literature and its Effectiveness in Improving English Language and its Cultural Understandings. Well, Dr. Areen, the floor is yours. You can start.
Thank you so much, dear doctor, professors. Well, if you can give me the
permission, yeah, go ahead.
You can give me permission to share my screen.
All right.
Yes. Yes, please try.
I tried it, but it seems that still the permission is not granted. Cool. Now you can see the full screen slides, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Today in 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about literature and culture. When it comes to literature, I mean, literary subjects at university, we have seen that during the university life, many students, they complain, and they are telling us, why do we need to study literature like novel or drama if we will be English teacher? As in high school or secondary schools, we never teach English literature. So what is the point of studying literature? So today my presentation is about not only about studying literature, but how literature can intermingle with culture, and it will broaden the horizon and the perspectives from different point of views. So if we just start with the introduction, we may say that literature is not only a subject, but it's more than that. Like, we know that language is made for communication, so literature is made for understanding. In order to understand different perspectives of a language, not only as a physical body of the language, as a skeleton of the language, but from different dimensions and from different angles, we should study the literature, because literary texts will help us in up-to-date words, vocabulary, and our competence and critical thinking. Through these 2 days, I have seen many presentations on critical thinking, on technology, but how can we enhance the critical thinking of our students? Indeed, through reading literary texts, because first, it will help us to understand that culture, and second, it will help us to understand the language of that culture. So literature is not only for fun, but it also helps us with competence. It will increase our competence, because willingly and unwillingly, English is not our mother tongue. It's not our the language of our nation. It's whether second or a foreign language to us. So in order to understand or to learn any language, indeed, we need to learn the culture first in order to know how to deal with that language. So another point which I'm going to deal with is about imagination. Through literature, we can help our imagination ability. One of the problems with our students is not only critical thinking, the lack of critical thinking, but also the lack of imagination. When you tell them to imagine something, they are very weak. For example, when I taught them writing, like academic writing, I told them to imagine a park or a garden. The city which I teach at university, we don't have a very big public garden or park. So those students from that city, they got a very low mark in that part. Why? Because they couldn't imagine a big park. This is the problem when we don't study literature. We cannot imagine. We only imagine in a circle which we see. We cannot imagine something that we want to feel it or we want to make it real. Plus that, and besides vocabulary competence, from grammatical book, we cannot enhance our vocabulary. Well, through literary text, we can enhance our vocabulary. Though my PhD is in linguistics and foreign linguistics, it will be kind of funny that they will tell me that you are majored in linguistics and you are talking about literature. Because for sure, I learned from literature more than I learned from linguistics. Linguistics is 1 + 1 = 2, which is more like math. But literature is more about fun, etiquette, behavior, culture, dimensions, angles, and different perspectives. Up-to-date researchers, they found that it will reduce the anxiety, stress of the students, the more because they will adapt faster. So it's not only about learning the language, it's about learning the wisdom of the language. So we should understand any culture before we start the first step of learning the language. Many past studies, they talked about this. Literature will help us to be aware of the world that we live in. If I study English and if I'm not aware of, if I do not know about British culture, American culture, Canadian culture, Australian culture, then what is the use of learning the language? Knowing the language, it means knowing the world. Some other people or researcher or scholar found that with literature, we can create or we can design creativity. It will help our creativity to some extent. That creativity will not come from other sections. When I'm talking about literature in any genre, novel, drama, poetry, or short story, novella, it's not only for English students major, it's for all kind of people. Like we have many people there, they didn't finish university, but they are a bookworm. Being a bookworm, it means you are in love with literature. So some other scholars or people, they believe that it's an authentic, genuine material, which is in your hand, which you can work on it. In order to understand the Shakespearean age, I have to go back to the Shakespearean drama. In order to understand the Victorian age of England, to understand the Cold War of Russia, to understand the Civil War of America, to understanding politics, we can easily grasp those knowledge from literature. Because if we read the works of Tolstoy, if we read the works of Faulkner, if we read the works of Hemingway, or Jane Austen, or Shakespeare, or Bronte family, we can easily adapt with their culture and their era or time. Plus, it's enjoyment. It is to release what kind of stress you have inside you. Some people, they go to a beach or a shore to relax, but some people, they take a book to the beach or the shore to read on that place. So it's more about self-release. You will feel relaxation. We have to make sure that the students will understand this point, because students should feel joy in order to learn a language. And once they want to learn a language, they should provide two things: vocabulary in one hand, grammar and structure in another hand, which we can easily grasp that, or we can easily come up with those in literary texts, up-to-date texts, or old era texts. So with the help of literature, grammar can be drilled much faster rather than just giving them subject, verb, object. Because many scholars believe that we acquire the language, but the first language as a mother tongue, partially it will be inherited. So in order to drill that knowledge, literary text will help the language faster to be drilled. Then what about vocabulary? We know that language is all about vocabulary. When we talk about a language, it means vocabulary plus grammar, because many linguists believe that with a low grammar, still people understand you, but with a low vocabulary, people will not understand you. Vocabulary is a piece or a tool that you can send your messages through different generations, through different people. So with a literature, with the help of literature, we can learn up-to-date words. Like when I say literature, even magazine could be partially a piece of literature, or newspaper, anything that we read it for fun or for enjoyment or for learning. So vocabulary competence, it's a part of life experience with a language, and it will help us to acquire the language faster, because willingly and willingly we learn or we acquire language rather than our mother tongue. Even for our mother tongue, we learn it step by step, like from the toddler and the baby, and then from gurgling and blubbing and the other points. But it will help us to acquire the language faster because it has a taste. Everything with a taste, it will be taken easier. And it will add more confidence to the language users. Why? Because your lexical system in your brain, in the left hemisphere of your brain, and through the motor system, it works faster. So it will help you to drill the knowledge, to grasp the knowledge, and to speak out faster. So another point which we can learn as the combination between literature and vocabulary is a logical combination. Many people, when they speak, there is no logical combination. That's why semantically and pragmatically it will be wrong. Though syntactically it's right. My father can fly. Syntactically, it's completely okay in English, but pragmatically and semantically, it's not, because my father is not a bird. So through literature, we can easily adapt with those situations. And it will help us to improve the language properly, in an appropriate way. If we just drill the knowledge to the student's brain with grammar, with math, with 1 + 1 = 2, tomorrow when they come up with another rule, they will forget these rules. Because we as a human being, if we cannot repeat something, with a period of time, we will forget it. So the same issue will happen if we do not study literature side by side with linguistic classes. Then through literature, we can enhance creativity. Why? Because we understand the culture. It's a paradigm that without the literature, we cannot understand the culture. No matter how fluent we are in speaking, if we go to that culture and we do not know how to behave, then actually we will face problems. So my point here is appropriately teach culture within literature, because this is the point that we needed. And it will not, that student, when they go out for further studies, they will not feel culture shock or reverse culture shock. Why? Because they have cultural awareness of that country that they are traveling to. And plus understanding the norms and the ideas, behaviors. Many people, they face problem not due to the language, but because they didn't know how to act, how to behave with that language. And it will help us to use the language to create our own piece. With literary works, we can create our own imagination. Like people will be writers. From what? From where? Just because they have a very fluent and bright idea of imagination? No, because they have vocabulary, they have structural competence, plus they read a lot. To be a good writer, you need to read a lot. And because, sorry, I have to go very fast because the committee told me to finish it within 15 minutes. So I try my best to finish it within 2 or 3 minutes. within my time range. So as a conclusion, I came to conclude that through the paper, literature is not only a subject, but is also a tool to give your intentions, to give what you learned. And also it will enhance vocabulary and linguistic forms. It will not only be for vocabulary. I learned many structures and many linguistical forms through literary works, because in that point, you will make a difference between American English and British English. And it's an experience, actually. It will enhance your imagination. The more you read, the more you can think, the more you can imagine. Before I went to China, I told people to imagine dragon. Nobody could imagine it. But when I went to China, people in China can easily imagine dragon. Why? Because it's part of the literature. So it's a based requirement. It's a class-based requirement. Without literature, that class, there is something missing in that class. So the students, if they want to learn a language, they should learn how to read, to improve their critical thinking, to improve their vocabulary, to improve their grammar, and to have more awareness ability. I hope that I finished it within 15 minutes or 14 minutes. Thank you so much for the timing, and thank you everyone for listening. I wish that I gave a bit of information about literature and classroom and critical thinking and culture.
Thank you very much, Dr. Areen Mohammed. Thank you for respecting the allotted time, very punctual. Well, I think Dr. Bilal